Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce you today Andrew Linnehan, who's the Senior Associate Director of Admission and Director of Communications and Audience Engagement at Northwestern University. Andrew, I've been trying to get you on for so long. I have so many listeners that have emailed me about Northwestern. Please, John, get Northwestern on, and here we are. So happy to have you. How you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's so good to hear that because I originally got into this industry as a Northeastern. Well, I was born and raised in Florida, but moved to Long Island in high school. And in the ancient days of the early 2000s, when I came to the Midwest, everyone was like, "Where are you going? Like, are you going to Boston?" Because they're thinking Northeastern. They've heard about that. But I got into the industry because I was like, "This is such a fabulous university that I need more people to know about."
Well, it's an awesome university, and there's definitely a lot of people that know about it and want to hear all about the great things that you have to share with us. So, Andrew, can you share what's new on campus in terms of any exciting developments or even any upcoming projects?
Yeah, I think, if you come to our campus right now, which is just north of Chicago, right on the shores of Lake Michigan, our two beaches that we have on campus are untouched, but there's a lot of construction. And I remember I get taken back to like when I was touring colleges, and like colleges might not look as aesthetically dramatic because there were all these cranes and stuff on campus in the summers. And my dad was like, no, Andrew, that's a good thing. Like that means
Sure
the college
is.
has money. They're improving. So there's a lot of fun construction projects. We're getting a pub restaurant in our student union, which everyone's excited about. We're building an $800 million football stadium that's just going to be state of the art to go along with our state of the art practice facilities that are on campus. We have a Kellogg, our world famous business school, has this beautiful new global hub. It's 7-ish years old now, but they just announced a new building and they vacated one of their old buildings, and that's turning into a spectacular new like multi-dimensional global hub and collaboration space. It's going to address a lot of pressing societal issues, going to be home to our School of Education and Social Policy. So just so much like innovation and building happening on campus now that ultimately will be really, really cool for all of the students who come here.
Absolutely. And to your point, construction is definitely a good thing because it means that the future looks bright. You mentioned a few things such as that pub/restaurant on your campus, the $800 million football stadium, which, I hope to be there one day to see that. And another thing that I could say is that I read, Andrew, that your retention rate is an astonishing 97%. The national average is about 70%, and the retention rate, of course, represent the percentage of freshmen that return for that second year. So are there any programs in place, Andrew, to help students acclimate to your awesome community, which adds to this incredible retention rate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I had never really thought about. I mean, I obviously knew we have, one of the best retention rates and graduation rates in the country, but I never really thought about it in terms of like what the university might be doing, right? Like obviously we get like a high caliber of student, but the question kind of makes me think and unpack of like all the tools that are in place. First and foremost, it's on the students that, the high school students that are doing their research and thinking about fit in a particular college at a much more nuanced level than students ever were before, right? So like credit to the students who've identified Northwestern as a really good fit for them before they even get admitted and commit to the process. It's a credit to our admission staff. Our staff kind of really emphasizes not just bringing the best students to Northwestern, but the best students for Northwestern. So similar to like what a student is thinking about in the process, hopefully they're not saying like, oh, I want to go to a good school and then looking up US News and just applying to the top 20 schools. They're thinking about what school is best for them, not what is the best school. And we try to do that on our end too. So that comes to mind just in terms of like a compliment to a staff that's trying to identify a student that not only is talented and ambitious and intellectually curious, but also like would fit here and would like it here. And then I think it's a testament just to the community after so many people talk about, financial aid resources, for instance, in terms of like making a college experience doable and accessible for so many. I think it's really a credit to our advising and support systems. Not enough people talk about the resources that are in play at a college that a college commits to once a student gets to campus. And we have such good advising and support systems, starting with New Student Week. So we have almost a whole week dedicated to just new students come to campus before any other student comes, and they meet two different advisors. They have a peer advisor, they have a faculty advisor. It's an inclusive, collaborative community. Like there's the intangible support systems too of just like the identity a community takes. And that's what I remember as kind of with my own personal adjustment is, and ultimately we can unpack this later too, but like the value to me of not just a top tier academic institution, but the value of what an inclusivity and a collaborative spirit does for a community. And I think kids come here and for the most part, like feel very supported. Like you would want to transfer. Like what would make a student want to transfer? Well, one, they feel like lonely, or like they don't have people to lean on. They don't have these support systems. They don't have a lot of self-confidence, which a support system helps you with, right? One of the hardest things to do in these top tier academic communities is to remind yourself that you belong there. Because you look around and you're like, oh my God, all of these people are just outrageously smart and turbocharged and everything. But if they want to talk to you and they're not afraid to like compliment you or bring you in or help you, like that goes a long way. So our tangible support systems and resources that the administration dumps into it, but also just like the vibe of the community, I think really helps too.
Well, I love how you talk about the vibe of the community. You mentioned inclusivity and, of course, a collaborative spirit. Again, retention rate, 97%. You touched upon the graduation rate, which, by the way, is about 95%. I love how you talked about giving really accolades to the high school students who are mindful and take the time to recognize that Northwestern is, in fact, the right fit for them, but also the very talented admissions office that are very mindful at looking at all of those applications and finding the right fit in terms of the overall freshman class. Now, you touched upon a lot of things, Andrew, but I'm curious, what else can you share about your community in terms of academics and extracurricular offerings that make students feel, again, at home at that awesome community we call Northwestern?
Yeah, I don't think it's an accident that there's this like vibe of collaborative spirit and inclusivity on campus, right? Obviously, you're not gonna, an application review process, like you don't really fully get to know students, or you're not like a master of puppets and like putting a perfect 2,000 students together. Like there has to be stuff that once a student gets here, there are cultural dictations that get everybody bought into that, right? I think from an academic standpoint, I mean, the layers of advising you get beyond even those two that you get initially, your peer advisor and your faculty advisor. Like, yes, you have to have the initiative to walk into a study abroad office or walk into the office of undergraduate research and say, like, I'm interested in pursuing this. But to immediately get an advisor when you go into these places, right? You go into career advancement, you get career advancement, and you get someone that can identify who you are, think about you as an individual, not a template, right? Not put a template on you is like how to do it. And like, what are your interests? What do you need support with? And I know this community and I will help you with that. That certainly is a cultural dictation. But then you start getting into, having a flexible curriculum, right? We're on the quarter system, which don't want to bore people with the different academic calendar, but we take 8 more classes than you would on a traditional semester system. And what that affords Northwestern the luxury of doing is saying, okay, well, listen, we're going to keep you intensive within your major, but we're going to give you a big bank of electives. And every single student, regardless of major, even in our conservatory level music school, they get a big bank of electives. And so they can use, so if every student has, upwards of a third of their curriculum where they can explore, one thing that makes us a little bit different in our peer set is that we have 6 undergraduate schools, right? We're not just a liberal arts college. We're a, bigger, kind of university under, and under the university umbrella, there are these 6 schools or colleges. But one thing that really differentiates us is you have mobility across those schools. So you can double major across schools if you want. You can just say, I'm going to take a class in all 6 schools. Like you can be a theater major and take an engineering class if you want to. You can be a music student and want to be pre-business because you're going to be a professional musician when you
Hmm.
grow up, and it behoove you to understand business concepts, right? And so the ability to do that and to sit in classes where the course topic might have interested you, but you're out of your silo, right? You're not a journalism student only going through 4 years with journalism people that are going to be future New York Times writers and NBC nightly news reporters. Like I came to Northwestern to be associated with those people. What I didn't realize was I was going to be in class with people that would win Academy Awards and
Mhm.
win Super Bowls and stuff. And so that is, whether it's conscious or subconscious, even in the classroom with the flexibility of the curriculum, starts to create this identity that it's okay to learn from people that might be a little different than us. And then I think you put big time sports on top of that. And I think that's the game changer. You do not need to be a football fan to be part of this kind of bigger, I call it a state school vibe, just for lack of a better
Hmm.
visual, right? But like when you go to a Northwestern football game on Saturday night and you're the 23rd ranked football team in the country and you're playing
Hmm.
Ohio State and they're the second ranked football team in the country, like so much is happening in that 4 hours that is not football related, right? Like
Absolutely.
it immediately reduces the stigma that you're known as an academic school, right? Like
Mhm.
I am looking at this thing and it is okay for us to be good at a lot of different things. And then you're standing in a student section of 3,000 students
Hmm.
and you're all wearing purple and you're rooting against other people. You're not rooting against yourselves. And to me, that is such a big deal when you're thinking about community, when you're thinking about, then every conversation you have, yeah, you're with, you're never going to be in rooms again where it's just like all of this talent surrounding you, right? And intellect. But when you all embrace each other, like that's the game changer of the experience. That's what changed my life. Regardless of what kind of privilege you come from or whatever, like you're changed and you grow because not because of the diversity and the talent and the intellectual talent, because that group hangs out with each other and talks to each other and stuff like that. So there's a tangible and an intangible to that kind of stuff.
And I think it's really important. You touched upon your flexible curriculum and clearly the interdisciplinary nature of Northwestern. That's something that definitely adds to that 97% retention rate because it's not just about being happy on campus, but again, having that flexible curriculum where, you might be an engineering major, but to your point, you're going to be taking courses in other areas so that you're not in a silo and you're really meeting people from all walks of life. So I think that's fantastic. Is there anything more you wanted to add about that? Or you did mention the quarter system. Just, before I go on to my next question, Andrew, just curious.
Yeah, no, I think that's all good. I think, and I would say like this is not necessarily a sales pitch for everybody, right? Like,
Hmm.
so, other students, as students look to find their fit, like this was super attractive to me, and I got a lot of value with it. But there are music students out there that might want a true music conservatory, right? So
Absolutely.
we just talk a lot about like what do these character traits do to attract someone who values that specific thing.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think it goes to what we talk a lot about, which is There are over 4,000 colleges and universities in the country. There are many schools that will be for you students, but not every school is the right fit for you. So, for example, there's a lot of people that would love that interdisciplinary nature of the community that we call Northwestern. But to Andrew's point, maybe there's someone who wants to be in a conservatory and really focus only on music and that's it. And that's fine, right? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just different opinions, different feelings in terms of what students want, and whatever it is the right fit for you is absolutely correct. So we appreciate that, Andrew. And of course, a lot of people want to hear about the holistic review process, right? So could you explain your holistic review process, Andrew, and what specific experiences the admissions team looks for when reviewing those applications?
They're not, your audience isn't sick of hearing the word holistic yet?
Maybe I don't know.
I am. I talk about like context, so I've switched from holistic to contextual a lot. Um, yeah, so a holistic review doesn't necessarily apply to what we're looking for per se, because we're looking for like a lot of different things, a lot of different people in a lot of different parts of our community, right? To fill a lot of different parts of our community. We're building a community of so many types of people from different backgrounds with different perspectives that can come together and interact in a lot of different ways, but also fulfill strengths of our community, right? Like, and our community is different, and our community makeup is different than school X, school Y, school Z, right? So, we have different world-class academic programs. We have a global makeup, right? We have an international audience to worry about. We have a Division I athletics department. And so I think it's really important for students to understand, like, yeah, there's 2,000 spaces in Northwestern's first year class, right? That's essentially what holistic review means. It means kind of like eliminating this notion that like everybody is applying to college from the same exact academic system and curriculum, and everybody has the same family dynamic, and everybody has the same resources, and understanding data points with context instead of just using a data point, right? There are some people that would love colleges to be a meritocracy, right? If I get a 1500 on my SAT, that is unequivocally better than the other person that has a 1480. And that's just not true in all cases, right?
Right,
That's fundamentally
right.
not true. If I took the SAT 7 times and I have been getting private tutoring since seventh grade and I get a 1500 versus a 1480 that walks in cold once
Hmm.
from a single family household that never went to college, like it's just different, right? It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just different. And so we have to like understand that. We have to understand when we review high school transcripts, right? Like, a really competitive public high school in Long Island that ranks their students still, the top
Hmm.
eight, if I'm in the top 8% of that class, it's not necessarily, it's definitely not comparable to some school in Colorado that grades their students in stars, right? Like
Right.
they're different environments. And even within the same high school, there are different environments. Like the students come from
Right.
different places and have different environments, right? If I have a blank activities chart, if I see a blank activities chart on the Common App, and then I learn that, the student takes 3 buses to school to get
Right.
to a better school district, that blank activities chart just looks differently than the kid that just goes home and sits on their couch and plays video games, right? It's
Absolutely.
just it's so it's holistic review to me is really just about context, right? Is understanding this specific application in the context of their surroundings, their environment, opportunities they've been given, challenges they've been given, all of that. And then figuring out, is this person, based on all of that, capable of coming to our campus, succeeding and flourishing?
Andrew, you touched upon so many things. First of all, when speaking to so many students and their parents, many people will ask a question like, what is the profile of the student that Northwestern is looking for? And what I would say, and you just confirmed it, is that students, if you look like every other applicant that applies to Northwestern, I think you're actually lowering your chances of being admitted. You have to be true to who you are. So, for example, as Andrew put it, if you take 3 buses to go to a school that is better than the one that perhaps you're zoned for, that might be the reason why your activity sheet, as Andrew put it, doesn't have a lot of activities. But you have to be mindful of making sure that in the application, that is there. Otherwise, if it's not there for them to understand, you're leaving it to the admissions people to speculate. If you hold a job because you have to help the family, if you have to look over an elderly relative because when they go to the doctor, you need to translate for them because they don't speak English. Whatever it is in the context of your family, you need to share that. Same thing with your transcript, right? They're going to look at the context of your high school. Did you challenge yourself based on what was available to you? How did you perform? Because not only do they want to make sure that they admit you and they know that you're going to be successful academically on their campus, but they want to know what kind of community member you're going to be. What have you done prior to let them see perhaps what you're going to do once you're on that great campus called Northwestern? So stop trying to determine what they're looking for. Be true to who you are and make sure you give a comprehensive review throughout all parts of the application. Would you agree with that, Andrew, or anything that you want to add to that?
No, it's so true. It's such great advice. That advice is out there. It's just this is where the noise and the chaos comes in again,
Mm,
right? To this search process. And you'll read about the stories that the media wants to cover of
hmm,
so and so got into 14 top schools
right,
and did a mission trip halfway around the world. Where
right,
what you don't read about, because it's not clickbait for the media, is the hundreds of people on our campus that were just really strong students that supported their family,
right,
that worked 30 hours in a part-time job and balanced a full IB or AP course load, like
right,
it's not sexy. So you don't hear about it in the noise and chaos, but it's about trusting that like that looks just as good to an admission staff, right?
right,
You just don't hear about those stories enough. So there's this portrait and this picture portrayed in the media of like I have to be I have to do these certain things or reflect myself a certain way on the
right.
app, and that's not controlling the process and trusting the process.
Right. And it's part of the reason why we have these conversations. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here. Here's a representative from Northwestern University explaining this to you students so that you have better insight in terms of their overall application review. Now, Andrew, you mentioned earlier, you talked about institutional priorities. You also touched upon the fact that your incoming freshman class is around 2,000 students, which of course represents an institutional priority in terms of the number of freshmen that you want on your campus for that first year class. Can you share with us the overall number of applications that you actually receive to try to come up with that class of 2,000 freshmen?
Yeah, so for the last couple of years, we've had more than 50,000
Wow.
applications for our first year class. And we have to usually admit like 33-ish hundred to get to
Hmm.
that 2,000 because obviously we're going to admit some in regular decision that are going to say no to us and go somewhere else. So usually we admit about 30, the last couple of years we admitted about 3,300 for more than out of more than 50,000 applications.
Right. So with over 50,000 applications, right, and you're trying to get that freshman class of 2,000, is it fair to say that, let's say, the first 30%, if we could ever come up with the first 30% that unfortunately was rejected, right, just based on sheer numbers, that first 30%, would you say that their overall profile is similar to the students that were admitted or not?
Yes, fair to
Right.
say. Anyone looking behind the curtain to these highly selective applicant pools, highly selective colleges and their applicant pools, I think would be it surprised me. I guess I don't want to speak for anybody else, but it certainly surprised me. Like you would think, oh, these colleges can easily just like get rid of 65% of these students. But it's a very self-selecting bunch. Like
Right.
for the most part, people that apply to Northwestern like understand the community and the level at which they need to be in their in their high schools and in their environments to like be competitive in our pool. So you'd be surprised at how like how high the percentage is of like super competitive apps. We had almost 10,000 high schools in our first year in our applicant pool this
Hmm.
year, right? And so like
Amazing.
even let's say you had a valedictorian apply from all those high schools. We only admitted valedictorians, which is not true.
Right.
Fundamentally not true.
Right.
We only have space for 20% of those
Right.
valedictorians, right? Like it's a different world, and that's not to freak anybody out. That's just to kind of set a reality. So when you get to the end of the process, you don't let a deny decision invalidate you in any way, right? Like
Right.
this is doing what you can to be competitive. Hopefully you're the type of person that this college views in their community, but it's essentially a lottery ticket, right?
Right.
And furthermore, I think it's important to understand what we were talking about earlier of like what kinds of things in these colleges that you're gravitating to, right? Like I gravitated to top tier academic environment, but also 4 years of college. Like I wanted the sports scene, I wanted the school spirit, I wanted that like collaborative kind of school spirit vibe. There's more than one school for that, right? So
Right.
it's identifying schools not based on their brand name, but based on what you like about that community, and then identifying 8 other schools that also have those character traits, which sometimes we don't do a good enough job of in the search process.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. So you said you get over 50,000 applications to fill a freshman class, an incoming class of approximately 2,000. You admit somewhere around 3,300 to come up with that yield. And it goes back again to what you were saying earlier in terms of the controllables and the uncontrollables, because as you put it, the first 30% of the students that are rejected, their profiles are very similar than those 2,000 kids that ultimately are going to make up your freshman class. So it's a lesson to students to understand the numbers, to understand that there are institutional priorities, but also to understand the importance of coming up with that balanced list. Let's say it's 8 or 9 schools, right? You want your reach, your target, your likely schools, because if you're applying to a school that their admission rate is less than 15%, let's say, that school is a reach for any student. You could have a really solid SAT score, ACT score, a perfect GPA. You could be the president of the class, the captain of the soccer team. It doesn't mean that you're an automatic shoe in at Northwestern University, for example. Now, you're worthy, right? You could probably handle the work on
That's
that
right.
campus, but unfortunately, with over 50,000 applications and only a freshman class of 2,000, not everybody is going to make it. So we really appreciate that. And I was also curious in terms of Northwestern's philosophy when it comes to standardized testing. And can you share the percentage of students who were accepted that didn't submit their test scores?
Yeah, I'll share the percentages that's in our entering first year class. So the ones that were
Sure.
admitted and decided to come to Northwestern
Sure.
on campus this fall, about a third of them were test optional.
Great.
So that's a number that sometimes would surprise some people, at least based on what I hear out there, right? Like it's not 5% are test optional, right? Like
Right.
it's a healthy percentage that are walking around our campus that are great students, right? And
Right.
and for whatever reason they didn't submit a test score, and they let their transcript do the talking, and we can figure out if you're a good student from your transcript and from your recommendations,
Absolutely.
and they're doing great here.
Fantastic. So it's about a third that would test optional, and that's for the current freshman class. I was just curious in terms of your philosophy. Are you test flexible, meaning that if a student decided to submit, for example, their AP scores, right, if they're available during the application process, is that something that you look at as part of your review?
Yes, absolutely. So that test optional can be for that can be for across the board, not just SAT 1 and ACT. If you want to submit your AP scores and subject scores, but not your SAT 1, that's fine. If you don't want to submit your SAT 1 and you want to, and not your APs, but you have a subject test and you want to prove that you're really strong in science, go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And of course, we touched upon it a little bit earlier in terms of that academic portion. And obviously, the transcript is a key component of it. Can you share, Andrew, how do you look at the transcript holistically, right? There's that word again, as opposed to just looking at a GPA. And do you recalculate the GPA as part of your review, or do you use the one indicated on the student's transcript?
Yeah, we lean on the high school for this. But yeah, this is as with the rest of the application, we're considering the transcript in full context of both the school
Hmm.
because every school is different, school to school environment is different, but then also of the individual student and their circumstances within said school, right? So a student that, for example, a student that does 2 years at one high school comes into another high school, they can't be in the accelerated track, like their weighted GPA might be a little different, right? Or the school
Right.
didn't weight their ninth and 10th and did for their own students that completed 4 years at that institute. So that all of that is context that
Hmm.
were included, and for that reason, like, we just don't believe in recalculating GPAs, right? There would be too many factors at play, we believe, that wouldn't necessarily tell the whole story, right? Even if you recalculated GPA in a contextual review, you'd have to include context in that new recalculation, right?
Right. Right.
We just isolate that transcript and that student in their particular academic world. And we're really trying to determine two things. Do you care about academics, and do you care about challenging yourself academically? But that's different school to school, and that's different student to student within a school. I mean, sometimes it's different teacher to teacher, right? Like, you get the one really mean English teacher in Atlanta that, like, it's his thing that he doesn't want to give out A's, and he hasn't
Right.
given out an A in 10 years.
Right.
We need to know that a B in that class is real good.
Right.
The B in that class is an A, let's be honest, right? So yeah, it's that granular, right? Like, we look at
Right.
grade distributions, we look at all of that just to determine, not necessarily to kind of get you to some kind of like algorithm that we're going to use to deem you academically worthy or not, but just to kind of get a sense of, like, is this student doing well in this
Hmm.
given environment, and are they seeking some level of rigor beyond just like a standard trajectory at that school?
That's awesome. So you talk about isolating the student and looking at the context of their high school, which I totally understand. Just curious, does it come into play where students from the same high school that are applying are being compared, and or do you also look at students that have graduated from there and attended Northwestern to help you in terms of that overall review?
No, I think looking at students who have previously gone to the high school and their performance at Northwestern would be comparing a student. And we don't like to
Right.
compare students, right?
Right.
You could be very different than anyone else that's come to through your high school. Comparing students to a high school is interesting because, unequivocally, we do not have quota. I've never been told in my 15-year career, like, hey,
Mm.
we can't admit this fourth student from this school because, like, we can't have more than three, right? Like, we
Right.
do not do
Right.
that at all. What you could argue is comparing is the high school environment, right? Like,
Right.
if we know that, like, top students in this environment are getting to AP Calc AB,
Hmm.
right? And someone peels off of math at Algebra 2
Right.
and doesn't take math junior and senior year, like, we kind of have a sense based on relativity, unless there's context behind that,
Right.
right? We kind of have a sense relatively of, like, what that means. But we would never say this student and this student in a room together, like, who's better. This student is automatically better because they have class A and B and C, right? And so,
Hmm.
like, yes, is there some kind of relativity at play because we are identifying what it means in that environment to be doing well and challenging yourself? Absolutely. But not from an individual student to individual student standpoint, if that makes sense.
It totally does, and I appreciate you giving us that context because a lot of parents in particular ask me that question, so I appreciate that so much.
I get John. A really funny story, real quick,
Sure.
because I know we probably got a lot more questions to get through. But like, all I got a call a couple years ago from, and this happens from time to time, right? Like,
Sure.
parents get so worked up about, like, what high school to send their child to,
Mm.
if if they want to go to school X, which, first of all, I'm like, well, does your child want them to go to school X, or do you want them to go to school X? And I got a call from a mom, okay, like, maybe this is like a year and a half ago, and it took me like 10 minutes because she was saying, like, what, like, I'm really worried, like, what are you like, what are you looking at, like, what would this school be better? And but she didn't mention any of the schools, and it took me like 10 minutes to get to. She was her child was 4 years old. She was thinking
Oh
about
my.
kindergarten for her school.
Wow.
And I go, oh, ma'am, you can send them to
Wow.
whatever kindergarten you want. We are not looking at a K-8 transcript. So yes,
Wow.
like just trust whatever environment you're in. It's okay. It's just
Right.
within that environment, care about academics, care about challenging yourself academically.
Well, exactly. It's whatever school you're in. What do they have to offer? What did you choose to take? And how did you perform? I think it's really that simple. Would you agree, Andrew?
Yes, 100%.
Fantastic. And so, digging deeper in the overall process, have you seen any recent trends in students' personal statements and essays that stand out to you? And perhaps could you share some tips for writing that strong personal statement?
Yeah, so when I give essay writing workshops, I always talk about, and this isn't a personal opinion, this is probably different admission officer to admission officer, but in my workshops, I talk about separating and not conflating topic and thesis.
Hmm.
So, topic is like a direct response to a prompt, right? But thesis to me should always be about the student. Because when you're executing your thesis, then you're executing it in a way where you're talking about and you're introspecting, you're talking about yourself, right? I think too often, and this is again the noise and chaos coming into play, right? Like a student or a family will read an essay prompt and then try to predict what the college would want to read out of that prompt, right? And that's not necessarily doing it the right way because we're reading these things not to see how well you write or not to see what you write about. We're reading these things to learn more about you, right? So we talked about this context. This is the spot where you're going to be different than every single other applicant in that applicant pool as long as you talk about yourself. So we'll share like a couple of examples, right? Like you can practice this exercise with any prompt you want, right? A lot of colleges ask, why do you want to go to our college now, essentially, right?
Right.
And we'll have a lot of students that'll write really good, like, why do you want to go to Northwestern essays? But they'll
Hmm.
just kind of talk about Northwestern the whole time. So we're not getting to know them. And they're listing a bunch of details, even as detailed as they are, right? They're listing a bunch of details that is available to all 52,000 of our applicants, stating the topic and then executing the topic without the thesis being about you, right? Like, what do
Right.
you, and we try to tailor some questions now to like evoke that vibe and aura of the essay a little more, right? Like we want you kind of picturing, not only identifying that this is a fit for you, but explaining to us like about you and why this is a fit to you. And you can do this for simple things too, right? Like if you're writing about my mom is my heroine, we're going to spell
Hmm.
heroin the right way, first order of business, right? But like that's not necessarily what we're reading, not, and we're not reading to learn about mom. We're
Right.
reading to learn about you.
Right.
We're not admitting mom, nor do we want her here for 4 years on our campus, hopefully, right? Like we want to know, like, so mom is the topic, but the thesis is this is why I am who I am today because of mom, right? Or something
Right.
like that. So as you're executing that, the answer to that prompt, you're telling us a little bit about you, and humanizing yourself in a way that the transcript and the activities chart can't do, right?
Right.
Like admission officers are looking at thousands of these transcripts and activities charts lined up back to back to back to back over the course of 3 months or whatever, right? What you need to do is humanize your application and really kind of teach us and let us learn as efficiently as possible, like who you are, where do you come from, what are your interests, why are they your interests, things like that, right? And so that's what, like, I think thinking about the, I would say the same thing for the college search process too, right? Like, don't do it in the way that tradition tells you to do it, which
Right.
is, what are the good schools? Now I'll try to find one that I like, right? It's like, what do I like? Like, use this as a time to reflect on yourself before you even start reading essay prompts. So you know
Right.
going in what you want to write about, and that's your thesis. And then your topic is just an example, essentially, or an illustration of what you wanted to write about.
Hey, podcast friends, if you've been enjoying the College Admissions Process podcast, I'm excited to share my new book, Straight from the Admissions Office Insider Strategies for College Applications. It's packed with insights and tips from over 250 podcast episodes with admissions professionals designed to make the college process less overwhelming. Whether you're a student, parent, or college counselor, it's a valuable resource for navigating the admissions process. By grabbing a copy, you're also helping to support the podcast. The links are in the show notes. Thank you, and best wishes to all with the college admissions process. Well, play that back again and again, because talking about separating the topic and the thesis, that was a mini masterclass there, Andrew. So I really appreciate it. And I love the many examples, one of which is if you're going to write about your mom, right? That's the example that you gave. Don't write about your mom as if mom is the person who's applying to college. You may mention your mom, and we say this all the time. Perhaps 10% of your personal statement could be, an introduction to mom, but 90% of it has to be about you, because they are trying to read about you and to learn something new that frankly, is different than whatever's on your transcript, different than whatever's on your activity sheet. And I love how you mentioned, for example, a supplemental essay which may ask, why Northwestern? And so, what many students do is they regurgitate facts and great things about Northwestern. It's almost like they're just writing or rewriting your pamphlet, if you will, right? You know how awesome your school is. You know your data. You know the schools, the colleges that you have. They don't have to repeat that. But students, if maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, if you take the time to research Northwestern, perhaps look at their philosophy and mission statement. Maybe there are things that you did in high school that are in line with that. Maybe you have the opportunity to talk about why specifically. Maybe there's a professor you want to work with. Maybe it's a program. Why specifically do you want to be at Northwestern? And don't forget to talk about perhaps how do you intend to contribute to that awesome community we call Northwestern. If you're able to do that, as opposed to just tell them how great they are, I think you're going to stand out in the application review process. Would you agree with that, Andrew, or not?
That's right. And that's why an effective application is a result of an effective college search, right?
Hmm.
Like if you've done the college search well and you've taken brand names off of it and you've identified places that really fit you, filling out that application in a quality way is easy. You've already
Hmm.
done all the work, right?
That's a
It's
great
when
point.
you haven't done that work
Right.
and you're applying to the US News and World Report top 20 and you don't know, like you have not connected with these places in any significant or
Right.
valuable way personally to you, that you start struggling to figure out things to write about, right? So
Such
the
a great
college
point.
search comes before the application.
Such a great point. And truly, this has been a masterclass. This is awesome, Andrew. Thank you so much. And another piece, of course, that the students don't necessarily have control over are those letters of recommendation. So, Andrew, what makes a letter of recommendation truly impactful? And have there been any notable examples recently that made a difference in an applicant's overall application?
Yeah, I mean, these are talked a lot about in like on reader review forms and in committees, and not for the reasons people might necessarily think, right? Like not for the everyone talks about how great their student is, right? Like we're not reading to see like how great the student is. We're reading these things to either add color to something we've already seen in the application or add a new part of this student's story that we didn't realize existed because the student might have forgotten to talk about it or might not have wanted to talk about it, right? I'll give you an example of each. Like adding color, right? Like an ineffective or an unhelpful, I should say. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't detract from the application. It's just unhelpful to us. Is when a teacher or even a counselor says something like, they're doing really well in AP bio
Hmm.
because the transcript's on the next page,
Right.
right? Like I can see that they're doing really well in AP bio, and some counselors are actually very good about it. A lot of them are upfront and say, "Listen, I have a caseload of 400 students. I don't really know this person that well,
Wow.
right?"
Hmm.
And so all they can do is kind of like maybe the student gave them like a resume or a few things that they do, and they list it out, and I'm like, "Yeah, but I see that on the activities chart, right?"
Right.
What's really helpful is when a teacher says something like, you know what, like he or she is like really good in my AP bio class, and either the material comes easy to them or they work really hard and they get a good grade. But they're the first person I see that when they see someone struggling, they go
Hmm.
help them out,
Right.
right? And
Awesome.
like a student can't fake that. Like you gotta actually do that. You gotta actually be that person. But that's the type of person that a college wants on their campus, right?
Right.
Like that's the inclusivity and collaborative spirit that we talk about at Northwestern. Is like when I see that, I want that kid. Because when the cameras are off and no one's watching, they're intrinsically motivated to support their friend and not rip a page out of their textbook so they get a better grade than their classmate, right? So like that's the kind of stuff that like that's adding color. That's saying, okay, A and AP bio, but also like this is the type of student you're getting, right?
Right.
Like we know they're going to be fine. We've seen our retention rates, we've seen our graduation rates, right? We
Right.
know they're going to be fine grade wise if we admit them. What we don't know is what kind of player, what kind of character are you going to be in our community? And so that's usually what these recs help bring to life is this personality, the effective recs bring to life is this person. It's affirming something that we already might see on a transcript. And then adding, I'll get so many helpful things, just examples of like things that a student in their world, like they just don't think to talk about, right? Because in their world, it might not be as impressive. So they assume that an admission counselor might not want to see it. We go back to like the bus example, right? A
Right.
student might not talk about that they take 3 buses to school each morning and afternoon, and it's an hour and a half commute just so they can get to a better school. But a teacher or a counselor mentions that, and they have, like, that's a realistic example.
Sure.
Like, they mention that, and that changes how I view that activities chart, right? Like,
Absolutely.
it's a massive factor and component because they've chose to give me some personal information about this student, right? Had a really hard time sophomore year because a parent got diagnosed with cancer,
Hmm.
right? Like, that transcript sophomore year just looks a little different, right? When
Right.
you're looking at that transcript, and you can make you start piecing together a story with these recs, with these essays that you just don't have on a static transcript or a static activities chart, right? We get a lot of color with the recs from the pandemic, right? Like,
Sure.
hey, like this student was in a 1 bedroom apartment with 5 siblings. Like I can see
Mm.
that they have 5 siblings, but I'm not Googling this address to
Right.
see like on every, like I don't
Right.
have time for that, right?
Right.
But to like paint a picture of like what they were going through while they were academically achieving, like that's a big deal. A student that is on the soccer team, right? And like in their world, they might not think to highlight soccer as an activity because they don't play that much, right? So in
Mm.
their world, they're not a good soccer player. So they don't want to tell an admission officer about that. But sophomore year, they held a fundraiser to raise money for new uniforms because they
Hmm.
thought their uniforms were hideous. Like that's crucial information to show us that you invest yourself in what you do, right? Whatever it is,
Right.
you're like care about it, you're passionate about it. So when you get to this college campus, you're investing yourself, right? You're
Right.
beyond, we need the students that are not going to be in the library 7 days a week, right? That is our value proposition at Northwestern is smart students who want to enjoy and have fun at college and hang out with each other and socialize and be, have as much value, educational value in their extracurriculars as they do in the classroom. And so we need to identify that you're that type of person. So like that's where the recs and essays really start coming into play to kind of add that color for us.
Well, those are great insights and great lessons for school counselors and even teachers. The teacher letter needs to add a new part of a student's overall story. Otherwise, it's really not helpful, right? As you said earlier, if you're saying that the student is really strong in a subject, and the next page you're seeing the transcript that indicates that the student is really strong in that subject, it's not adding anything new. But is helpful, and I quote, you said it, is if a teacher writes, they are the first person that I see help someone in the class that is in need, right? That is something that's not easily found on the activity sheet or the transcript. So be mindful, teachers, school counselors, anyone who's writing a letter of recommendation, that you're really looking to not just repeat what's on the activity sheet, but really add value to the overall application. So giving insights in terms of, maybe it's a student that you have to really think of your lesson planning because you know that they're going to ask amazing follow-up questions, and guess what, higher order follow-up questions to their follow-up questions. So when you lesson plan, you really have to be mindful because you know that that student, Andrew, is definitely going to challenge you, right, in a good way. Or as Andrew gave that example, that's the first student that always helps someone in need. So those are great examples. And I was also curious in terms of what are the different ways a student can apply to Northwestern in terms of early decision, early action, and is there a benefit, Andrew, in applying one way over the other in terms of being admitted or even being considered for merit-based scholarships?
Yeah, so we have two decision deadlines. We have an early decision path. The deadline is November 1st, usually every year. And then we have a regular decision deadline, which most people are familiar with. And that's kind of the deadline that a lot of schools have in early January to submit your application to however many schools you want. I said early decision, not early action, right? So our only early program is a binding program. And that essentially you're agreeing to, if you are admitted, withdraw all of your other applications. So you can only apply binding to one school. You can apply early decision to Northwestern and still apply to other schools. You're just withdrawing those applications should you be admitted and attending Northwestern. We do think a lot about in our review process the student's interest level in Northwestern. And I don't mean that to be like, it's not a quantitative analysis, right? We're not like check in the back end of like how many links
Hmm.
did you click on in our emails to try to like fill our first year class. We just want to make sure that if we only have 2,000 spots in our first year class and we have this luxury of this super deep applicant pool that we've talked about, like let's at least get 2,000 students who really want to be here. So we reserve about half of our 2,000 student first year class for early decision. Now, what that means is, given the current state of affairs, if there are 20,000 applicants to early decision, the admit rate's going down, right? We're
Hmm.
not gonna just admit our whole class through early decision. It's about half,
Right.
right?
Right.
But as of right now, as of last year, a little more than 5,000 students applied early, right? So the review process is not any different. Our review process is the same. The strength of that early decision applicant pool is just as strong as our regular decision applicant pool. But what it does mean is proportionately, it's a little easier to get into Northwestern. I don't want people to hear easier and say like, oh, they'll bend their academic standards for early decision, right?
Right.
The review process is the same. It's just you have a proportionately better access to spots, right? So if you get to the point in your college search where you've kind of like defined these 8 to 10 colleges or whatever is kind of on your final college list, and Northwestern is unequivocally like number one, you can say 100% certainty, if I'm admitted to Northwestern, I'm coming to Northwestern. You have to consider applying early decision. You're just doing yourself justice to think about that path, right? In regular decision, again, review process is the same. Nothing changes about aid. We do not give out merit aid at Northwestern. We are a need-based institution. We put all of our money towards financial aid, but our financial aid program is one of the best in the country. So last year it was more than $250 million goes to meeting 100% of every single
Wow.
family's demonstrated need without loans. No loans are packaged into that figure. And
Terrific.
our review process does not include financial stats. So we're not making admission decisions based
Hmm.
on your ability to pay. There are very few schools in America that can claim all three of those things, right? We meet 100% of need up to the total cost of attendance without loans. So sometimes you'll hear
Wow.
schools say like, oh, we meet 100% of need, or, oh, I have a free tuition scholarship. And it's like, okay, yes, great, awesome. But college costs more than tuition, a lot more than
Hmm.
tuition, right? Like
Sure does.
I need to live, I need room and board, I need to get there and back, I need to live while I'm on campus, right? And so all of that is factored in. So the difference between it's important for families to understand the difference between tuition and cost of attendance, right? And then also important for them to understand what each college's financial aid policy is, right? And so in a lot of cases, for us, even though we're an expensive school, if you can afford to pay all of that
Hmm.
money every year, but in a lot of cases, we're a more affordable school than schools that don't have as much money to give to families that need it. So your cost of attendance at Northwestern is literally basically what the federal government claims that you can afford to
Right.
pay per year in conjunction with
Right.
our financial aid office, agreeing on this number. This would be reasonable for you to pay per year to send the child to college. We'll give you in grant money, money that you do not need to pay back, anything on top of that.
Yeah, and I know that, our listeners are very smart and they probably know this, but every college or university has to provide what's called their net price calculator. We'll probably just link it in the show notes, but also if you just search Northwestern University net price calculator and you actually populate the different sections of it, it'll give you a very accurate calculation of what you'll end up paying if in fact you're lucky enough to attend Northwestern University. So, Andrew, I know that the acceptance rate at Northwestern University is at approximately 7%. So, obviously, there are students that get deferred or perhaps they're waitlisted. If either happens and the student is obviously very much interested in attending, what are the actions that they should take to possibly help their chances to come off those lists?
Yeah, so we don't rank our wait list,
Hmm.
nor do we rank our ED deferrals. So early decision, I guess we'll take it in two parts. Early decision, you'll get one of three decisions, right? You'll either get an admit decision, a deny decision, or a defer decision.
Hmm.
Defer means we're going to reevaluate you in the broader context of our regular decision pool, right?
Right.
We will re-review you knowing that you applied early decision, though,
Hmm.
which is certainly a component in that review process. We
Good
know
to
that
know.
you applied and you wanted initially you were willing to sign a contractual agreement with us that you would come to Northwestern if you were admitted. Um, with the regular decision wait list, so there's three decisions in regular decision also, except instead of the defer, it's admit, deny, and wait list. Usually when we try our best to make an admit or a deny decision and not string our applicants along. But there are some cases where, in an early decision process, you don't have senior year grades yet, right?
Hmm.
And maybe there was like a spike in rigor and you want to see like how that student handled that, right? And so we're just saying like, hey, we want to like just postpone this a couple of months and kind of get a little more context behind your senior year in. With a wait list, it's generally speaking like we really wanted you and we just do not have room,
Right.
right?
Right.
And if not enough people say yes to us, we want to be able to go to our wait list and
Of course.
offer you a spot. And we are just as thrilled when we offer a waitlist student a spot as when we offer a student a
Of
spot right out
course.
of the gate. But yeah, there's no ranking on a waitlist. We do ask students when we waitlist them to opt in. So they might have another school that they're going to and say like thanks but no thanks. We just want to know that to kind of trim down our wait list a little bit. But yeah, there's no real ranking. We just go, and again, that's kind of where the institutional priorities come in and the class shaping and all those things that enrollment managers think about that isn't necessarily at the forefront of even some admission officer minds, but also like families and students' minds.
Well, we appreciate that, Andrew. And this entire conversation has truly been awesome. Unfortunately, we're getting close to the last question. But before I ask that, I must ask, are there any questions that I simply didn't ask or any topics that I didn't bring up that you'd like to share with us now, Andrew?
That was so thorough. It was such a good conversation. I love talking about this stuff.
Hmm.
Again, like no, just so your audience knows, no one at A goes to college to be a college admission officer. And and no one really kind of gets into college admissions without like caring somewhat about students, right? Like you have to really like students and meeting them and connecting with them at this part of their journey. It's probably the first like real monumental decision a person makes is, am I going to go to college? And if I am, like where? I have found myself talking more and more over the last few years about mental health in the process, not just because we're just so much more aware as a society for the better with mental health, but also just because of the nature of this particular beast, right? Like, and especially as someone who represents one of these highly selective institutions where, there's just so much of a pressure cooker in these environments that we're asking 16 and 17-year-olds to deal with, and we're feeding them all of this noise and chaos, right? And so I see it at college fairs. I see it on applications. In essays, like there's so much to contend with now that there never was before, right? Like my college search process was like
Hmm.
this guide to colleges, paragraph about each school. Hopefully it speaks to you, right? And maybe you had the means to visit a campus, and hopefully you liked the one tour guide you got that day, right? And other than that, like you're not digging into the community. But now with social media and all of this like information exchange out there, where everyone is kind of craving to have a say in this very interesting topic,
Hmm.
especially in highly selective college admissions. There's just so much misinformation that I see that is put on the student to the point where if the student gets absorbed in that, and it is easy to get absorbed in that, then
Sure.
then it is really hard to not invalidate yourself at the end of this process, right?
Right.
Or be misled just by virtue of like my college search was changed because an uncle at a family barbecue told me I need to apply here, and he wasn't even thinking about like what my interests are, right? And so there's just so much of that out there that I find myself more and more in like college presentations or whatever, just talking about the need to really trust yourself in the process, use it as a time to like get to know yourself, ask second level questions, right? Like, what am I interested in? Why am I interested in it? Who are my friends? Why are they my friends? I will tell you, just as someone with perspective, as an old person with perspective, right? Like, um, looking back on my experience at Northwestern, I would have done the college search process so much differently. I would have thought
Sure.
about the communities more than I did the student to faculty ratios or the number of study abroad opportunities, which is what all the view books tell you, right?
Right.
They have all the pictures look alike after a while and the stats. Like I didn't know, I kind of understood the concept of what it would mean to have a small class, but 98% of the value of my Northwestern experience came from my peers and my friends, because so
Right.
much of your time in college is not in the classroom. It's not like high school, right? Where
Right.
like you come at 7 in the morning and you're done at 5:30 if you're lucky. If you're in multiple extracurriculars, you're not home till 8, you're having dinner, you're doing your homework, you're going to bed, right? And a typical day at Northwestern, maybe you have 2-3 hours of class, and then the rest
Right.
of the time is not with your professors, right? And
Right.
that's not to demean the world-class faculty here. It's not to demean the resources. Like you're going to get everything you want in a top-tier academic environment at a place like Northwestern, right? But what the value to me was, and what even 20-year-old, even when I was in it, I was not thinking about, was like how much I'm growing as a person because of this inclusive, collaborative environment that has all of these diverse backgrounds and perspectives, right? It's one thing, we can give you a class profile and we can say we have this diverse student body. You come to campus, everyone's smart, everyone's intellectually curious, offers this different perspective. If they don't want to talk to you and it's a super cutthroat environment, that means nothing. Right. And so the ability I had to connect with people that were different than me, but I also felt like supported me, has made me grow up in a way that I would have never grown up if I wasn't in this culture and this community for 4 years, constantly reinforcing that, whether it's conscious or subconscious, right? You think things that I have for like the audience to latch onto, like you go to a movie, right? But I was a journalism person going to a movie on a Wednesday night with a film major at one of the best film programs in the country. And 20-year-old me is not thinking like, oh, wow, I'm going to a film class, right? But after the movie, we have dinner and he's explaining why the movie was great or why the movie sucked from a technical standpoint, right? And like, over the course of 4 years, like this is not a 4-year decision, right? Like this is a 40-year investment, because for the rest of my life, I go into a movie theater and my
Right.
experience is elevated because of that relationship. He had the wherewithal to say, not, dude, you're a journalism major, I can't talk to you about this movie, right? Like you don't get it. Like he was eager to explain to me this movie, right?
Right.
And so like that's a super small low key example, right? But like do mental case studies if you're listening. Like do mental case studies on leadership, right? Like what's a good leader, what's a bad leader? And like the good leaders, usually they understand the power of a team. They're not intimidated by surrounding themselves with talent, right? Bad leaders generally have to be the smartest
Right.
person in the room,
Right.
are really insecure, always like they have their guard up, right? And like
Right.
to me, there are different environments that it's nuanced, but there are different environments and communities that will reinforce certain things, will reinforce certain characteristics in you. And so, like, how do you want to grow in 40 years in 4 years for the next 40 years of your life, right? And
Yeah.
that, to me, that should be a big part of the college process. And you can dig into these communities so much more than you ever have been able to before, right? You can go to our YouTube channel right now. You can watch 6 student panels and meet 30 different students and
Right.
say, like, is this what I want? Like, is this the vibe? Are these the people I want to spend the next 4 years of my life with?
Well, I love that. I love how you talked about using the college process as a time students to really get to know yourself. Ask yourself, why do you want to go to a certain school? Try not to think about where your friends are going, where a relative went, but really ask yourself, why do you want to go to a certain school? Understand that there are institutional priorities, right? These are things that might not be in your control. And don't forget to build that balance list and look forward to digging into whatever community is fortunate enough to accept you. Those are great pieces of advice, Andrew. I really appreciate that. This conversation was awesome. Unfortunately, it does lead us to the last question, which is what are your top 3 pieces of advice that you would provide students and their parents getting ready for the college admissions process?
Oh, only three. um, yeah. I think I think we've done a good job of touching on a lot of them. I think the three that stand out to me, one by a mile, is just be yourself in the process. Like, do this process for you. Don't do it because anyone else tells you where you should go or what you should like or what you should write, right?
Hmm.
Do this process for you. Use it as a way, like, leverage this opportunity to, like, think about yourself, learn about yourself. Even if it's not 24 hours a day, just informally, like Sunday evening, hey, I'm going to spend 30 minutes. I'm going to put on some music and I'm just going to, like, think about, like, the next level of, like, my life right now and, like, what I
Hmm.
respond to and how I want to grow or what do I who I want. Like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like that my boyfriend or girlfriend did this. Well, why don't you like that? Right? Like, I don't like that my friend did this. Why? Or I love that my friend did this. Like, why do you love? Right? And start thinking about, like, who you want to spend 4 years with to get to where you want to go. And also do it for yourself, because at the end of this, like, colleges are going to come and go. You're going to probably have a really good time at college wherever you go, right? Like,
Hmm.
and understand, like you said, understand those institutional priorities. So at the end, if you've done it for yourself, you have gotten to a place where you're trusting this process and you are never, ever letting a denied decision, especially at one of these highly selective places, invalidate you in any way, right?
Right.
You
Right.
have to trust, and an admit decision absolutely validates you and absolutely validates your hard work, but a deny decision does not invalidate you. And if you own this process and do
Correct.
this process for you, it'll be easier to kind of work through that. So that's number one. Number two are critically think about the colleges that you're interested in. Watching a football game is really fun, but think
Hmm.
about the nuanced factors beyond, like, what that experience would do for you just beyond 4 years, right? Joining a fraternity and sorority is fun, but, like, think about, like, why you want to do that. And if this is going to be a prolonged thing that's going to, like, let you grow in college, or if this is just going to be a fleeting thing, right? The difference between 188 study abroad opportunities and 196, like, is not, like, it's a 6-to-1 faculty ratio, 8-to-1 student faculty ratio. Like, yes, you can absolutely think about all those things, but just, I strongly, you know, encourage people to think beyond that, right? Think beyond the view books, think beyond the websites. One of the silver linings of the pandemic for me, putting on my marketing and comm person's hat, is that it forced these colleges, which are generally speaking inflexible, risk averse industries, to, like, get into the 21st century and meet you students where you live, which is on your phone, on your devices, on YouTube, on social media. So, like, follow the school accounts, follow the admission accounts, meet students, go to YouTube pages, sign up for digital sessions. You can really start digging into these communities in a really valuable way. So that would be number two. And number three, I guess, just trust the process, right? Like, number two is communities. Number three is dig into the communities. And
Right.
number four is just trust you're going to end up where you belong. and fundamentally trust that, and trust that early in the process. Don't try to get to that in March of your senior year, a week before decisions come out, right? Like understand that and be grounded in that the whole time, and you're going to be great.
Absolutely. Be yourself throughout the process and trust that you're definitely going to end up where you belong. Andrew, this has been phenomenal. I can't thank you enough, and I'm looking forward to having you back eventually for a follow-up episode. You were awesome. We really appreciate it.
Let's do it. My pleasure. Great to talk with you, John.
Our pleasure. And to everyone out there, thank you so much for listening, and good luck to all with the college search. Take care all, and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP. Thank you for listening to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success.